Welcome to Open Mic from Modalis Infrastructure Partners, where aviation talks and the world listens. From global airport and aviation developments to disruptive technology, airport investment, and much more, we unpack the trends, technologies, challenges, and opportunities shaping the global aviation industry. Now here's your host, Curtis Grad.
Welcome to the Airport Open Mic podcast by Modalis. I am very pleased today to introduce our guest, Jody Aldcorn, business law partner at McCarthy Tétrault, based in Vancouver, Canada. Jody, great to have you here joining us, and been looking forward to this interview for quite some time. So again, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Curtis. Happy to be here. I've been really looking forward to this.
Well, it's interesting because now I guess this will be the 8th episode in the series. And we've had a number of common acquaintances, including Craig Richmond and Elizabeth Brown and others. And it feels like we're getting a good family of folks here together, and we'll have lots of stories to tell. But maybe we can start with your story. So it's coming up as 15 years since you joined your law firm, and time flies. The majority of that work has been focused, I believe, on airports. But what do you find most interesting about this work, or compelling? And I guess, it's a little bit different from what we know mostly in Canada, but you've been working in a lot of other places as well. So tell us all about it and what you think makes the airport business unique.
Happy to. So yes, you're right. I hadn't recognized it, but it is 15 years at McCarthy's now. And that's quite a while. The bulk of my practice, as you say, is built around airports, but it involves both representing kind of the Canadian airports and the airport authorities, as well as private sector participants, including on the transactional side. What you said about working internationally and how it might be different there, that's absolutely true. What's interesting to me is that airport law wasn't really a recognized practice in Canada until fairly recently. In the US, of course, you'll find lawyers who hang out a shingle as dedicated airport lawyers.
Yeah.
But I think the difference is because, like, historically, there's been a very complex and layered regulatory environment down there. In Canada, most lawyers touch this space as either litigators or solicitors, and they do kind of a little bit of airport work from time to time, or perhaps more, but very few have real hands-on experience on how an airport actually runs day to day.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is 30 years ago, airports weren't really considered an asset class either. Like when global airport development conferences started up 30 some odd years ago, there was just a handful of transactions. And from your not-for-profit experience in Canada to these private airports across the world, it's now become a sector unto itself. So of course, you would start to see or expect to see airport specialization for legal representation as well.
I think that's right. I think you asked what draws me to the work. So I think there's two things for me. The first is kind of the sheer breadth. Like, operating an airport is, as I always say to when I'm trying to hire people, it's like running a small city. Like, almost every area of law you can think of gets engaged. There's sophisticated commercial contracts, IT and technology, real property leases and licenses, project financing, environmental, governmental policy, even operational crisis management when something goes sideways. So you're never just doing one kind of work, and that keeps it endlessly interesting.
It's interesting you say that, because it feels like that's the common theme with all my guests so far. It doesn't matter what side of the business you're coming from, whether you're a chief executive or customer experience or operations, or in your case, the legal aspect. The airports are very dynamic, and it's a very interesting place to work because you just never know what's around the corner. Every day brings a new challenge and something interesting.
Exactly. So that's, as you say, same for the legal as the operational. For me, the second thing that I really like is the transactional side of the work. I find that genuinely rewarding. Because these projects are so large, you end up working very closely with the client, like sometimes for years, on the redevelopment of an airport, like building a new terminal, for example. And when that's done, you've kind of helped create something that actually changes people's daily lives for the better. And I think of projects like you've been in many of these as well, right?
No, I've been on the ground on the implementation side. After all your lawyers and finance people get the projects together, I'm the one that usually was there putting them to action, right?
That's right. And then you get to walk through that new terminal, right? And you watch the travelers use it in the community, and there's really nothing better. Like, that's the part that makes the long hours worth it, for sure.
The great irony, and we'll talk about it a little bit later with the GAD conference, but we spent a lot of time, I think you and I, explaining that we're in airport privatization in different aspects, doing the work of airport privatization in a country and a continent that doesn't really have a lot of it. So my great desire is that we live and work long enough to see Canada and the US in the same sort of frame as the rest of the world. And I was at a conference last week doing a panel, and it was in Florida with a U.S. audience, and I started with my famous presentation on the global deal pipeline, and I said, "You see the blanks on this map? China, Russia, Canada, and the U.S." And there was kind of a gasp in the room, right? But it's kind of ironic when you look at that map that the four countries of exception are those four, but for different reasons. So, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later in this chat. But maybe turning gears a little bit and looking back, your legal career kicked off with Miller Thomson in Vancouver in business law. What kind of law or what kind of work within that firm were you doing? Was it more general, or were you also in the transportation side of things?
Well, here's the thing. It's actually true that my official law career did start at Miller Thomson, which is another great Canadian law firm. However, that was as an articling student. But my very
Oh,
first
okay.
job, at an airport, actually came years before that, and that's the reason I do what I do today.
Okay.
Haha. So let me back up just a second. And
I was going to say that did not show up. That did not show up in your CV. So good to know.
no. So long ago, I grew up in the Toronto area, and then I first came to Vancouver in high school, and it was actually to compete at a national kind of sporting tournament, and it was March. And back home, it was blizzarding, and I stepped off the plane in Vancouver, and the sun was out, and the flowers were blooming.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I drove down Granville, right? And I thought, oh my God, like this is part of Canada. Like, why don't I live here? Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
so I decided I was going to make my life on the West Coast.
Okay.
So I did my undergrad at Queen's, and then I chose UBC for law. Now, I'll be honest, I found the first year of law school really stressful. So when I walked out of my final first year exams, I hadn't given a single thought as to what I was going to do for the summer. So I was kind of panicked, as you might imagine. I went to a temp agency. I knew how to type. And my first placement happened to be as a receptionist in the executive offices at the Vancouver Airport Authority.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, now I remember that story. It's all coming back to me. But yeah, it's funny how different doors in your life open up, and you just never know where they're going to lead you, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I ended up meeting Larry Berg, who is the VP of HR. He hired me for the summer. I ended up meeting Michael O'Brien, who is the VP of Legal. And then I worked throughout the remainder of my law school career at the airport. And that was my kind of beginnings in airport law. And of course, it's all come around since then. In the interim, I did end up going to Miller Thomson as my first practice law firm. And I actually did tax law. So to answer your question, I was a tax lawyer. I did my master's in tax law.
Yeah. Okay.
But no longer.
And I take it you found tax law very fascinating.
Absolutely. It's just, it really is. Quite honestly, it's like the mental gymnastics of it all.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. So, yeah, but it's funny how those different decisions you make, just again, they open up the doors. And I'm kind of facing that in retrospect now, because later this week, Sally, my wife, and I were heading to North Dakota for a 40-year hockey reunion for my first year of university, right?
Oh.
But for a random couple of reasons, I ended up doing my first year at this junior college in North Dakota, largely because of my uncle with a basic education kicking me in the butt and saying, go take that path less traveled, go to North Dakota. You don't need to go where your buddies are going in Saskatoon. You never know where it's going to lead you, right? Well, 40 years later, that decision has landed me where I am, and it's all a series of doors. You don't know when that one door opens where it's going to lead you, right? It's what makes me smile when I hear these parents talking to their kids about, you're 14 and you don't know what you want to do with your life. I'm like, they'll figure it out. Right. So easy for me.
I didn't know that about you, Curtis. So
Yeah,
thanks for
yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So That's the fun part about life. You never know where it's going to lead you. Now, I think you spent some time in Deloitte as well before you ended up in as you were eventually legal director at YVR as well, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that was like
I
that was the heyday of YVR back in that decade, right?
Absolutely. So I did stop at Deloitte. That was due to my tax practice. I decided I had to talk to people instead of sit and draft memos. So
Mhm.
decided to go back to the airport authority. And they were really heady days. Like I call them personally like my golden years.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not just for the obvious reasons, but there were many other things going on too. So let's see, like when I decided to go back, I was working with Michael O'Brien once again, of course. He asked me to come back. There was three conditions. So the first one is I wanted to work on the Canada Line project.
Oh, that's
Um,
right.
so for those people who aren't familiar with it, that's kind of the rapid transit line that was being built to connect the airport straight to downtown Vancouver. And YVR was an equity participant. And that was one of Canada's first public-private partnerships. And I had actually
Exactly.
written my tax thesis on tax policy issues that arise in P3s.
Oh, really?
So
That's great. Okay.
yeah, so I was like, I get to, take something that I'd only studied on paper and finally get my hands dirty on the real thing. So I didn't want to pass that up. The second condition was that I wanted to be part of the Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics. Um,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
that was coming up. I love sport. It runs through my whole life. And YVR was what they called, I think at the time, was a designated venue that
Okay.
kind of got special rights associated with the Olympics. So the idea of helping plan for that event with that kind of scale and sophistication from the inside was just too good to pass up.
The airport was really just, as I said, hitting its stride. You were building out the new terminal, they were elevating levels of service. Traffic was growing, and
Hmm.
well, they were and continue to win a lot of awards. So it looks like you guys did something right in those early days to keep it going.
Absolutely. It was, all moving up. And then kind of the third thing for me, and this was the most important at the time, is that in my student days at the airport, I'd been lucky enough to help with research on international projects that YVR's wholly owned subsidiary at the time, which was YVRS,
Oh,
which is now
yeah,
Vantage
yeah,
Group,
yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
running. So I thought that was just absolutely fascinating. Like there was this relatively small Canadian company that was helping foreign governments operate their airports. And I really wanted to be a part of that. So I insisted on being a part of that if I came back. So they're fond memories, great timing, a wonderful time at the airport.
It's kind of a cool full circle moment that you go there as an administrative support for a bit of job experience, and a few years later you're back as corporate legal counsel. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
There was a few years in between there, but yes.
Yeah. Well, again, I had one of those experiences again last week where I'm coming back from that conference and I'm checking in at Air Canada in Fort Lauderdale, and I realized, like, oh man, I was tossing bags behind that counter 35 years ago. So
Uh, in
again, the
Fort Lauderdale?
shivers. Yeah. I've been when I was going to school in North Dakota, I got this internship at Piper, and that's in Vero Beach, Florida, the aircraft manufacturer. And about a month and a half in, they went through one of their many bankruptcies. And not only were we the last ones still in the department because somebody had to answer the phones, but then I managed to find at least a bit more work experience working at Air Canada in Fort Lauderdale to kind of stick around and finish up my intern because I couldn't go back to school. I was in midterm, but yeah, I was pitching bags at Fort Lauderdale during the month of spring break as a 21-year-old. That doesn't sound so bad, right?
That's
So,
pretty good, actually.
but literally, when you're standing in front of the counter, the hairs in the back of your neck go back, stand up, and you're like, "Ooh, I've been here before, but not in that exact spot." So, yeah, it's
Oh, that's
crazy.
great.
So any fondest memories from that time at YVR?
Oh, so many, I would suggest, but let me think. I guess the people, the folks at YVR, they're just genuinely passionate about what they do, always have
Yeah.
been. And that
Mhm.
time, especially at that time, it felt truly like a family. And
Yeah.
being part of that was something very special. So,
It was quite the, I guess you call it fraternity or sorority or combination thereof. But yeah, yeah,
uh-huh.
still hear lots of stories from those days. And actually, that's a great segue because part of our tradition on Airport Open Mic is what we call crazy stories. And I know you're going to tell me that lawyers don't have crazy stories, but I'm sure you do. And it, they might not compare to the crazy ones from Craig Richmond, but I'm sure you got at least one, right? Craig qualified his as I got crazy good and I got crazy bad. So that's what you've got to follow up on.
Okay, I like that differentiation. Although most of mine are good, the crazy bad ones, as you correctly surmised as legal counsel, I can't share those ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But the high points, certainly. So generally, I think being part of the Olympics, that the sheer electricity of it all and watching the athletes chase their dreams up close, that was very special. For projects that I've been involved in, I've been through a few crazy roller coasters. I'm very proud to have been involved in Vantage Airport Group's work in the Bahamas. So I'll never forget like negotiating and signing the NASA airport management agreement kind of with the Prime Minister of the Bahamas in 2006. I think the other part that I really enjoy about what I do and some of my fondest memories have been at the closing of transactions. Because back in the day, transactions were completed like in actual physical closing rooms.
Yeah,
I get to fly in,
yeah.
so long ago, and you get to be on location, right, for the closing.
Yeah,
And
and you're initialing every page, and yeah, it's crazy.
yes, yeah, you do that. So there'd be hundreds of pages, and you'd get all the documents ready, and everybody would sign off, and then you'd have a glass of champagne. But on more than one occasion, it so happens that that night would be the night that my client would be taking over, the handover of the actual airport would occur.
Yeah,
So
of
that
course,
is like
of course.
super fun. In one location, which I will not disclose, it's midnight. I'm tagging along with the client as they're like physically changing the locks and swapping out the signage in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
terminal.
yeah. It's like you're taking over a condo. Yeah, taking possession of my condo at midnight, right?
But you get to drive around,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
airside in the
yeah.
cars and
Hmm.
what have you. And for example, another situation like that was the LaGuardia Central Terminal transaction.
Okay.
And the timing of this is almost spooky because it was actually 10 years ago last week.
Oh, really?
Um,
Wow.
So we celebrated that one at midnight, the giant cake and party hats and the whole thing. And just a few days ago, someone who was there emailed me a photo from that night. And seeing it all brought it back, and there was such a profound sense of accomplishment in that room. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
those moments
Yeah,
stay with you for
I've been
sure.
mostly there for the handovers. I've never really been there for the signing of the deals because the operational people that are implementing are rarely the ones around when they're signing the deal. But that sense
Hmm.
of anticipation when you're taking over an airport and you don't know what the rides come what's coming in store on that ride and some of them are a little bit they're like a roller coaster, right? So but
Hmm. Hmm.
you were saying in Bahamas you met the head of state when you did that signing ceremony, right?
That's right. Because
Yeah,
it's just so important to some, it's the
yeah,
crown jewel, this
yeah,
asset to
yeah,
many of the Caribbean countries that I've worked in. So it's
yeah,
really gratifying to
yeah,
be
yeah.
involved in something that important.
And it's the biggest thing, especially for those smaller countries, right? For me, it's the great irony is that through all my expat career, I think I've met the head of state in every country that I've worked in, including in Jordan, which happened to be the royal family, but I've never met a Canadian head of state. Right?
Well,
So,
you still have time, Curtis.
yeah, yeah. Well, maybe Mr. Carney will want to talk to us about airport privatization at some point. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Well, again, there's just some great stories, and as I mentioned, Craig had some pretty good ones last episode. But he had a few years of overlap with you when he was VP of Ops before he shipped off to Bahamas. But you must have a few good stories involving him as well, as long as they pass the censors.
Past the censors? Unfortunately not. No, Craig. Craig is honestly a wonderful person to work with. He's smart and savvy and genuinely kind of forward-looking. Like you could hear it in the last episode when he talked
Yeah,
to you about boiling an organization's values down just to a handful that
yeah,
everyone can
yeah,
recite and live, and about treating succession as a set of options rather than a fixed plan. Like he's a really thoughtful guy.
yeah.
And luckily, as you say, I had a front row seat to a lot of what he describes, both at YVR and actually overseas. So when he was in
Yeah,
Nassau, I was still
yeah,
involved with that
exactly.
airport, or Liverpool, for example. However, what people, and it came out a little bit in your session with him, but people might not know about Craig, is that he is like a seriously fun guy.
Oh, absolutely. You should be a comedian. So it just cracks you up, right?
Yeah, like that Jackie Chan Kung Fu Rumble at YVR thing was
Oh man.
amazing. And he
Yeah,
was also known like from time to time for like singing and dancing in public during his gig in the Bahamas. Like
yeah,
he always has a smile, usually a joke, and he
yeah.
brings out the best in everyone that he works with.
Well, when I grow up, I want to be like Craig. So there you go.
Don't we all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we alluded a little bit earlier about GAD Americas, and that was Charleston. I guess that's about 2 weeks ago now, but it's one of those places I probably wouldn't have went other than for the conference because nothing would have necessarily brought me there, but a very interesting place and very iconic. And ironically, that's where you and I tend to catch up is at these conferences rather than Vancouver. But I guess we'll be having to try to fix that over the next little while.
Yes, it does seem like we always catch up in other parts of the world. I think the last time was Lisbon, right?
Yeah,
Before we came
exactly.
Charleston.
Yeah, that panel that you did in Charleston was quite interesting. I know you've done similar ones in the last couple of years on the Canada Spotlight, but it actually feels like we have something to talk about now, that this isn't just about what might happen or what could happen, but it seems like there's a real concerted effort, at least from the current federal government, to make something happen. But I know it was difficult for the panelists on that panel to say too much because they're the actual airports, but what do you see coming down the pipe? Do you think it's real this time, or are we just still in that exploratory phase?
I think that's a good question. So for those who might be listening, but who are less familiar, of course, Canada's airports run on a like a federally owned, locally operated model. So Ottawa owns the land, but leases each airport long term to an independent, not for profit authority that kind of finances and runs everything on its own dime under a user pay system. Clearly, as you noticed at the beginning of the podcast, very different
Yeah,
than the privatized airports or even the US. As you say, we've seen this before. I think 2015, 2016, 2017, there was a lot
yeah,
of talk and a lot of discussions, a lot of panels, right? I think you and I are both on them.
yeah, yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
but my gut is certainly this has been taken farther than it has historically, and it's taken a lot more seriously. And we're just in a completely different environment now with the recent challenges that Canada's been facing. So, yeah, I think if not a certainty, there's certainly a good likelihood that this is going to be explored seriously.
Well, it's one of those every conference I went to in the last 15 years, at some point they were talking about the third runway in Heathrow and Canadian privatization, both of which seem like they will never happen. But I do get a sense this time around that back in 2016, 17, we brought a European operator through for a road show. We went to Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, met with some of the airports. We met with the Privy Council. We met with Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Transport would not meet with us, which was interesting. But the questions that were being asked by the ministries at that time told me that they had not even talked to private airport investors and operators. It literally was a trial balloon that got blown up very quickly by the unions, some of the opposing airports, and frankly, the airlines. This time
Mm.
around, for me, it feels different that Prime Minister Carney is coming from a different mindset. He's coming from a different experience. He knows private equity. He knows the investor motivations, and he's got a problem, like you alluded to. It's you know, he needs cash to be able to do the things the government needs to do. And me, as a taxpayer in Canada, I can't explain why our tax money should be tied up in assets that don't need to be owned by the government, but the devil's always in the details, right? Like how do you do it, and how does it work to be for the best benefit of the public at the end of the day?
Well, that's the key, of course. Like there's a lot of great benefits about the current model, but monetizing, if the government's objective is to monetize the airports, then certainly it's going to change.
Yeah. And I wait to be proven wrong, but I think this time around, the government's intent on finding ways of monetizing, maybe they won't maximize, but they will monetize to the highest degree possible to be able to free up that cash to do other things, whether it's the Invest Canada Fund or what Build Canada Fund, I guess is what they're calling it. But at the end of the day, when the landlord wants to divest or wants to monetize, whoever's leasing the land, whether you're a renter in a condo like we talked about earlier, or you happen to be the operator of an airport, you better start figuring out how you're going to be relevant and still allow the landlord to meet their objectives. Otherwise, I think you're going to be on the sidelines. But I guess we'll know in the coming months what it's going to look like, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a variety of alternative structures that could be viable that come with different advantages and disadvantages. So we'll have to wait and see.
And the bottom line is you've got airport authorities that have long-term leases, most of which are running at least into the 2070s, and the federal government can't just make that go away. That it's part of the fabric and structure of what they're working with, and I'm keen to see some solutions and see the evolution of the model. I agree with you. It's done some tremendous things over the last 30 years, but I think in order to continue doing tremendous things, it needs to evolve as well. How that ends up manifesting in the future, I guess maybe we'll talk about that one in the next panel that we're together on. How's that sound?
It's a deal.
Okay, perfect. So the other thing that I'm curious about, and you alluded a little bit earlier to your passion for sports and whatnot, but when you're not globetrotting and stick handling airport projects around the world and attending conferences with me, what are you doing for fun? Sounds like there's still lots of sports in your life, but you must have some other things in your downtime as well.
Well, the sports are primarily my kids doing them these days.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
To be fair, I keep it pretty simple. I live in North Vancouver, which is honestly one of the best kept secrets going. It's only a few kilometers from downtown, as you know, but I've got kind of the ocean on one side and I've got the mountains right at my back door. That's kind of all the same thing that grabbed me as a teenager when I was stepping off that plane like years ago, right? I still can't believe I get to live here and call this place home. So I like to be outdoors. I love to hike, and most of the time I'm doing it with my husband and my kids. I find there's nothing better than being up in the mountains, unplugging, and just being together as a family.
I live in Steveston with my wife here, and I literally look out into what looks like a park setting. And even during COVID, the worst of COVID, being able to walk out of your doorstep and have 10 miles of river dike trail to walk and get some fresh air and enjoy life. It's a pretty amazing place and quality of life. And I always laugh every time I see U-Hauls or moving vans. You know that everything is one way, that everything is coming west, and they have to pay somebody to drive the vehicles back. Most of us ended up on a one-way trip, and me, it was 35 years ago after university, came out here for a job that was the only job available at Transport Canada at the time, but it was in the IT department, and I knew nothing about IT, but it was at 800 Burrard Street at Transport Canada, and I'm sure you know the building well, but you talk about a place that shaped my life. So that job led to an operations job that led to eventually Pitt Meadows and Abbotsford and Nanaimo and God knows what. But it also led to meeting my future wife, and it led to a whole different set of things. So when we talked earlier about how doors open up and you never know where it's going to lead you, it's pretty interesting to thread that needle and see where it's led you. But Transport Canada has been the sort of common denominator to a lot of us of our vintage, right?
It's funny. You keep telling me about your place, Curtis, and how beautiful it is in your view, and yet I haven't received an invite yet.
Well, it's an open invite,
Nice.
and the patio is open every Saturday from 10 to 2. So there you go.
Look forward to it.
Absolutely. I think we're kind of wrapping up towards the end here, but we have this other tradition in open mic, and it's called the magic mirror. And it's a very scientific psychometric psychoanalysis that will bare your soul. So are you ready to take the challenge?
Okay, I'm taking a deep breath.
And remember, it's no hesitation, no filter, and as I said earlier, no profanity. Okay. Um, Starting with favorite aircraft, civilian or military, current or historical.
Ooh, confession time. For a self-described airport geek, I know shockingly little about actual airplanes, but I can say like an Air Canada Dreamliner with live flat
Yeah.
pods, that's my happy place.
Yeah. Well, and that airplane, when it came on the market, and the way it's built with the carbon fiber and all that, but also just the simple things when you're in the cabin and the light or the windows dim by a button,
Yeah.
that's something almost seems space age 10 years ago. So no, I agree. I love that airplane, and whenever I see that that's what I'm getting onto, I'm in my happy place for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is a three-parter. Apples or oranges, coffee or tea, flat or sparkling. So start with the fruit. Apples or oranges.
Apples, envy apples specifically.
Sorry,
Yeah.
which apples?
Envy.
Envy. Okay, I haven't tried those. So
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah,
Nice and crispy.
yeah.
Coffee for definitely, and sparkling.
Okay, perfect. I like those Fuji apples, and I love the blood oranges as well. So,
Mm,
and I'm definitely a coffee over tea and a sparkling. So we're pretty much 3 for 3 there. Now, this one I don't know for sure. Preference, cats or dogs?
mm, dogs. They
Okay,
love you back.
yeah. Well, Elizabeth Brown made me laugh so hard when I asked her that question because she said, "Don't tell my cats, but I love dogs." Right? Oh man, yeah. And cats will never forget that slight. That's for sure. And how about the scariest animal?
Oh, don't know if this counts, but I would say North Shore wolf spiders. Have you ever seen
Yeah.
one of those?
Yeah, I like when I came up from the
Oh,
prairies 35, 40 years ago, I'd never seen
oh,
one before. And when you could hear it running across a tile floor, you know it's big.
oh,
You know it's big,
yeah,
right?
yeah. They
And
just grow them big on the mountain here for
oh
sure.
man, and again, anybody that hasn't seen one of these, it's like a grape with 8 legs. It's just ridiculous, right? Yeah. And you have to give it a nice appeasing name like wolf spider. Like what else could you call it to terrify people, right? Not sure if you're a car fan, but what about favorite classic car?
Ooh, I have to admit this one too, because I know you love your cars, Curtis.
Yeah,
And you've told me about yours.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but for me it's the same as planes. Like doesn't matter. Like I couldn't name, you know, uh
As long as
more
it's
than
comfortable. As long as it's
well,
comfortable.
I have a Tesla and
Okay, okay.
and and you don't have to get any gas. And so for that, I'm very
Yeah,
grateful.
okay, okay. And for the listeners, the car that Jody's talking about is my 1974 Grand Torino, which was my grandmother's car that I restored during COVID, as one would when the world is going to hell, spending ridiculous amounts of money getting a car back on the road, but never a regret. And that was my grandmother's dying wish, was put some shiny rims on it. She got the shiny rims and some shiny paint as well. So my my title as best grandson ever is well intact, I hope. So next one, famous person, living or dead, you'd like to have dinner with.
Ooh, there's too many people for
Oh, I
that
know.
one.
That's what makes this one difficult. It's not like there's a singular answer, but you must have at least one good one.
Uh, you know what? The other day I was this is going to make me sound a little crazy. I was listening to Pride and Prejudice
Yeah,
as an audiobook because that's
yeah,
something I
yeah,
like to do. And
yeah,
I think maybe Jane Austen, I don't know, I think her
yeah, yeah,
take on the
yeah,
modern world would be
yeah.
fascinating.
I often we watch a lot of history stuff together, my wife and I, and you say, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to travel back in that time and experience that?" And you say, "Yeah, that would be great as long as you weren't put in a pike or died of malaria or 1,000 different things that can kill you. But as long as I had a bubble around me and it couldn't be pierced, it would be just absolutely amazing to go back in history. But I think we're a little too delicate to survive in the past. We've become a little too precious, and there wouldn't be any Wi-Fi. So there you go.
Yeah, that's the real problem, isn't it?
Exactly. You talked about wolf spiders, but what about your greatest fear?
Hmm. I'm a little superstitious, so I have to pass on that one because if I name it, it might come true.
Oh man, I got to tell you, like I'm not superstitious, but because my wife being from Chinese culture and the number four is not a lucky number in Chinese, I'm always avoiding fours, and it's not even my born culture. So yeah, I'm with you there. How about favorite dessert?
Anything with chocolate.
Yeah,
That's a pretty
yeah,
easy one.
I'm with you there. Dark chocolate or milk or white?
I pretend to like dark chocolate. Should show my, make a good example in front of my
Yeah.
kids. But
Oh yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah,
no, like rich and creamy, right? Milk
yeah.
chocolate, probably.
Yeah, I haven't become a fan of this new Dubai chocolate. Maybe it'll be an acquired taste, with the stuff with the pistachios in it, right?
Not bad. I'll take it all.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. What about your earliest memory?
Hmm. I actually have a horrible memory. I did gymnastics as a child, so probably doing a gymnastics routine or winning a medal at a
Okay.
gymnastics meet.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I grew up on a farm, so there's too much childhood trauma there growing up at a farm that I don't think I want to share. I don't want to share that one either. The good thing about living up on a farm, you get toughened up in a hurry too. So a little bit of a later question. What about most used app on your phone, excluding WhatsApp and Outlook?
I am on my phone a lot. Libby, perhaps. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a library app.
No. Oh, okay. No, I haven't
It's
heard that. Okay.
so I like to read. I find it helps me take my mind off my work. And there's, thousands of books to choose from.
And that's the nice thing about the technology these days. At least you can carry a device with you and have hundreds of books and not be dragging them around. So,
Hmm.
absolutely. Well, the other thing we don't have to drag around as much is media players. What about the favorite movie of all time?
Once again, tough one. Princess Bride. You know,
Yeah,
eh,
that's a good one. That's like a rainy winter day when that comes on. Keeps you occupied, and it's got some great liners in there, right?
that's right. Endlessly quotable, never gets old.
Yeah, yeah. That's with Manny Patinkin, right? And
Yeah.
apparently, to this day, people still come up to him and give them the whole "You killed my father, prepare to die" line, and it's like, if you tell me
Of
that one
course.
more time, I'm going to kill you, right? So.
I think I'd do it if I saw him too.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But no, that's definitely a good one. Now here's a tough one on the entertainment theme as well. But you've got one song to listen to for the rest of your life. What is it?
I would say anything by the Tragically Hip. Being an Ontario girl
Mhm.
and going to school in Kingston, that was kind of like peak Canadiana at the time and still really easy to listen to. Maybe Bob Cajun.
Any non-Canadians hearing this podcast, I encourage you to go on Spotify or YouTube and take a listen. It doesn't get much more Canadian than that, but it's good stuff.
Agreed.
So, okay, we talked a bit about travel and some of the places we've connected. What's the favorite place you've ever visited, and what's your top bucket list destination?
Hmm. Favorite place? Sumatra to see the orangutans.
I have not been there, but now you've got something else for my list. Thank you.
Fantastic. And at all point in time, because I went to university in Australia for my last term of law school, and I got 3 glorious months off in Indonesia. So
Oh wow, wow, that
that
would be
helped. That
amazing.
helped. It was amazing. Bucket list, to be honest, nowhere in particular right now. Like I feel like I've been lucky enough to travel a fair bit. When I was younger, we're actually trying to plan a summer trip in Europe, which we haven't planned yet, my family and I. So, do you have any suggestions?
Well, I was going to say, have you been to Croatia?
We're thinking Croatia. My husband has a bike race that he is doing starting in Nice towards the latter part of August. So I don't want to go anywhere too hot, right, during that period. We're going to drop them off. So Croatia is a maybe. I'll let you know.
Well, Actually, I just had a chat with our good friend Parm Sidhu from Abbotsford, and
Hmm.
he was on some sort of hiking trip. Involved a cruise as well. It sounded quite interesting. It was a couple of weeks, but it included some hiking in Croatia, and he said it was quite amazing. So,
Hmm. I'll have to give
but
Parm a call.
yeah, absolutely. It's been on Croatia's been on my list for a long time, and I even had a flight booked there for a conference when I was in Jordan, but for a variety of reasons, ended up canceling it.
Ah,
But maybe we'll meet there for a glass of wine and dinner with our friends one day soon.
yeah,
Hey, it sounds like a great place for Gab World. We'll have to talk to our friends at Informa about that.
sounds like a plan.
Okay. Now we're getting to the final, literally the final stretch. Your personal mantra in 10 words or less.
The harder I work, the luckier I get.
That's a good one. And I guess there's a variation on that is luck is a combination of hard work and good fortune, right?
Exactly.
No, that's a good one. And I think words to live by. So, well, I tell you what, this has been an absolute pleasure, Jody. I really enjoyed it and happy we persisted. We talked about this for a few months now and finally got the time and opportunity and thoroughly enjoyed the chat.
Thank you, Curtis. I very much enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us on Open Mic. If today's conversation sparked ideas or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Visit airportir.com/open mic to listen to more episodes, connect with our team, and stay informed about the global aviation developments that matter to you.